let's rock and roll, man. I'm excited.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Scattercast, channel dedicated to what me and my brother are into in the moment. We've been into a lot of Magic recently, but we're kind of shifting a little bit to some other hobbies and some things. But we did want to touch on the latest Secret Lair release and talk a little bit about that, and some of the other kind of goings on. Hasbro had its like market share. I don't know what you call it, like the little, how they did this quarter of this year recently. So there's there's some new stuff kind of on the horizon. They did very well. Spoiler.
They did very well in a year where people couldn't get into stores to actually play Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering did very, very well.
Yeah, Magic did well
last year.
Dungeons and Dragons did very well. So it's been a crazy year, but we really want to focus on the Secret Lair. But if you've never, been here before, you're just stopping in, give us a like, subscribe. This show is, dedicated to the stuff that we're into. And we, have like, we're starting to branch out a little bit and hit on some other stuff.
Yeah.
But so you got the newest Secret Lair.
A lot of our videos that our earlier videos, they were kind of like a catalog of videos that we have been building. And so we've been slowly releasing them, but now we're on like a schedule.
Yeah.
So it may seem kind of, Magic heavy in the beginning or RPG heavy, but believe me, like we have a ton of interest. It's the whole reason behind the podcast to begin with, why it's called Scattercast, because we could be like into anything from Magic the Gathering, tabletop, wargaming, role-playing games, to music, to, everything else. So, but yeah, man, you want me to get into the...
Yeah, because I forgot which one this was. We were heavy into, we still are. Kaldheim came out not too long ago.
Yes.
Something that's chopped a lot of money into that.
Right.
That was awesome. It was fun. We got to actually play some more. But this is the Secret Lair that just came out. And
Kaldheim. Yep. Kaldheim came out. So I think I mentioned this in a previous episode on Magic, but when I first heard Kaldheim, nothing against the name, that like it's not anything to do with name. It's just that now that I've been playing Magic long enough, I know certain, worlds and stuff like that within them. And that one didn't jump out to me. Like it wasn't like, Theros or going back to one of these other ones. So I'm like Kaldheim, and I'm like, whatever, I'm always excited for new Magic content.
Yeah.
So the player in me is always going to be excited for anything new that comes out in Magic. But as far as like the lore person in me that likes, some of the Magic backstory and stuff like that, Kaldheim lore at first didn't seem to really grab my attention. And then I saw something about how the world of Kaldheim was going to be this vicious, like Viking, almost Norse mythology world. And I was like, okay, now you got my attention, because I can be all about that. Obviously, everything from Thor in comics, we relate to comic books and stuff like that. But we're really into, one of the things that Travis and I love in life is probably more than almost anything, because almost anything that we do can almost always be traced directly back to music. And so and in music, I would say that one of like the genres that we like the most is probably metal. And within the metal genre, there's a band called Amon Amarth, which is their Viking, like basically like Viking Norse mythology metal. Like all of their songs like actually have to do with like, Viking mythology and stuff like that. So I'm thinking like, cool. So that's the first part. I'm not even thinking really like metal and magic. I'm just thinking like Norse mythology and magic. And then they announce this Secret Lair here that's going to kind of coincide with the
one I'm salty on that I didn't.
The hype about Kaldheim, and this Secret Lair is called Party Hard, Shred Harder. And so I'm going to go ahead and open it now and get into the cards.
We've shown this for anybody new. We've shown these a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably have some, images of them show up, but this is you actually unboxing these, your personal collection,
Yes.
and I'm
Yeah.
salty I missed.
And anybody that's like either new to Magic or coming back after a while, the whole so the whole thing behind the Secret Lair, or just to do a real quick thing on Secret Lair, is Secret Lair is this thing that Magic's been doing for I would say roughly about a year now.
Mhm.
And it's just they call them drops. And it's actually, I know they've been doing it for at least a year, because the first Secret Lair I got was the International Women's Day one that they did last March for International Women's Day. Yep. So it's usually some sort of a theme, and it's a special I'm not going to get into we've already talked about this before. I'm not going to get into the Walking Dead one. We know that the Walking Dead ones were one-offs, but it's basically their Magic cards that exist. They have been put out in other sets or other manners in the past, and now they've come out with either special foil versions of them or alternate art that's not available, but it's usually based around some sort of theme. So this theme called Party Hard, Shred Harder, and if I could get the freaking thing open here, is capitalizing on the metal concept, I guess, or somewhat concept behind Kaldheim. So they decided to turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Magic cards from the past, and they're kind of metal sounding already, but they decided to turn them into metal posters. So like if you were to go to a metal concert and get like a poster or see a poster of this band, or even just the album artwork or whatever, like if anybody that's in the metal knows how most metal music bands they look, that they're writing and stuff like that. So that's what this is. So you want me to just go through each one?
Go through, man. All
right. So the first one is Anguished on Making. It's 1 white and a black. It's an instant exile target non-land permanent. You lose 3 life. Love this card anyway, but this is how they made it look.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now all these cards have great band name. Like that could be a band name.
That could be a band name, yes.
Like I would see them.
One card that was super hard to get, I think I may finally have a copy now, besides this one, but I remember back when this first came out, like this was a hard card to get. It's Assassin's Trophy. It's a 2 mana, a 1 black, 1 green instant, destroy target permanent and opponent controls. Its controller may search the library for a basic land card, put on the battlefield, then shuffle their library. So it gave black and green access to something that didn't really have access to before, but it's called Assassin's Trophy.
Nice.
Once again, all metal looking.
That looks like a Mastodon poster right there.
Yes. This is probably my favorite. So maybe for this one, like go back on Scryfall and like in editing, and you can do like the new version versus the old version. I absolutely love this card the first time I saw it.
Okay.
Before it got metalized, just because of the fucking way it looked, like it kind of looked like almost like, it's hard to explain. It almost looked like Star Warsy. But the card's called Decimate.
Nice. How was that not a metal band?
Yes, it is 2 colorless, a green and a red, and then it's destroy target artifact, target creature, target enchantment, and target land. So the hard part about this card, and it's sorcery, so it's at sorcery speed, so you got it for Magic players, you know what that means. But the hard thing about this card, though, as much as I love it, is that you have to target each one of those things. So to be able to cast it, say,
you need to, it's like
you have to target a creature, a artifact, a enchantment, and a land. So say
someone doesn't have an artifact,
and you have to target your artifact, or if neither one of you do,
you have to target your own. Oh shit.
Yeah. So you have to target what it says you have to target. So it is kind of niche, but still it's a card that I absolutely love. I've jammed it into a couple of EDH decks, but I'll just show you the way this looks. Like of all the ones, like this is the one that I was like, this is the metalist of them all. Like it actually sounds like a freaking band. It looks like a band. all these cards have like the same like thing going for them too. Like it's brutal. Anguish I'm making is like exile target non-land permanent. Assassin's Trophy is like destroy target permanent. Decimate's like destroy a permanent or whatever.
They're not flower cards.
No. Second to last, you have Dreadbore, sorcery, destroy target creature or planeswalker. Very straightforward, black-red card.
Nice.
That one came out around the time that they changed. I think someone's gonna be screaming at the fucking thing right now. But the big thing I remember about Dreadbore is when it came out. I feel like this may have been one of the first cards I can think of that actually said destroy planeswalker, because in the old days when planeswalkers first came out, they had a thing like you had to basically either attack them like a player, and then you would choose whether to block or not, and you do damage that way, or you had to be able to do direct damage to a player and then redirect that damage to a planeswalker. And then when this card came out, this was the one that was like, no, flat out, you can destroy a fucking planeswalker.
Oh wow.
So, and then last but certainly not least, I actually have a EDH deck built around this guy. This is a legendary creature zombie assassin Thraxamundar.
Nice.
So I'm totally gonna freaking get that sucker back out of my my box.
Swap building around
it. Oh yeah, dude. So and then every Secret Lair comes with like a free bonus card. And it could be anything that like usually and this one's kind of let down for me just because I've got it already, but it's Angrith, Captain of Chaos. He's a legendary planeswalker. He says creatures you control have menace, and then if you minus them, you can amass 2, which is a special mechanic that they have. But it's the they called it the stained glass effect. So it kind of looks like stained glass. He's cool. I actually like this creature. Or this card. He's in one of my EDH decks. He's in part of the 99. But it's just a bummer because I already have him. But still, like totally cool. Like I can't believe they took one of my favorite hobbies and one of my favorite music genres.
Yeah,
literally like mashed them into one.
I mean, it's rare. I mean, you would think it would be an obvious choice, but it's very rare when like especially how much crap we're into. But like when something that big ends up, crossing over,
right?
And
and they're gonna cross over more. I mean, like we've just got some pretty cool announcements about Magic.
We're not going to jump too much into the financial stuff. There's plenty of people who have done that. We're kind of late-ish to it, whatever, but we're going to definitely go over surface level what's going on and kind of talk about how that affects us and what we're kind of into. But there were some announcements, pretty much 3 main themes. One of them's not a crossover, but it's very derivative of a popular IP. So, but what are like the coming? What's coming down the pike?
Well, the first one. Or wait, so when you say is not, that's the HP.
Yeah,
is that what you're talking about? Okay, yeah. So there's actually kind of a couple. So the 2 that are on the docket, like the 2 that are actually out.
Yeah,
or not out. Like back up, not out. I mean, like we actually know like releases and shit like that. Like they are coming.
Yeah.
Is what a lot of us in the Magic community have dubbed, which is Magic the Gathering Harry Potter. It's actually called Strix, like Stryx. It's very Harry Potter-ish. But it's not actually Harry
Potter. Which is I was more excited that it wasn't Harry Potter.
Yes.
Once I realized that it was, and they're in college, it bites hard into Harry Potter with the school.
It's the whole thing, like with the schools and
it's like
and
university
stuff like that.
Sort of, almost like magic frats, and sororities.
But it's a realm or a world that's gonna kind of revolve around these wizards or planeswalkers, more than likely is what we really call them, and they're gonna be they're gonna kind of be part of different I don't think they're going to call them schools, but they'll be part of different
they're
like
called
schools like that.
I think they're like called universities.
But it plays into the whole multicolor aspect. So when you go to when you look back at Magic sets of the past, so like the Ravnica sets, whether it was original Ravnica or Guild Pact or Return to Ravnica, the Ravnica world, they are guilds, and so each multicolored combination has its own guild. So I see them doing that with this Strix, where it's like the black white color combination will be like one school or university or area, and then the blue green will be the whatever, however they decide to do it. I haven't read a whole lot about it. I've not fully taken a back seat to Magic, but I've been very busy the last couple months. So some of these new announcements that have come out, like I know enough. Like I've always got my finger on the pulse of Magic.
You're peeking.
So I can I know enough about Magic that I can read a couple tweets, or I can see like a quick article, and I could be like, okay, yep, I see what's going on. I don't need to take like a deep dive into it and stuff like that. But I don't know enough.
Yeah.
To like talk about it, break it down.
You're like
I haven't even seen any previews or spoilers of it.
You're like dad watching the kids when they get quiet. You kind of like, okay, go back to doing what you're doing. no one's bleeding, no one's screaming. Exactly, and that's when I saw that it wasn't Harry Potter. I'm like, cool, it's Harry Potter enough without being the property.
Like it might just not be something that grabs you. Like there's certain worlds that grab you. Like I wasn't a huge when Magic the Gathering came out with Amonkhet and Kaladesh, I wasn't like huge like on like they just like that world didn't like grab. I still bought like a fat pack and stuff like that, but it wasn't the world that like I was like I'm gonna buy like packs after packs after packs.
Yeah, like Kaldheim Ikoria, I was all in. Anything in between, it was just kind of like whatever. But if it's something like that gets us inspired, that we learn a little bit more about something cool, we might get into it. But I really enjoyed that it was, it was taking the Harry Potter flavor and they did their own twist on it. And the other two are straight up IP, like involvement. So there's 3. Oh, I didn't know about this.
If you didn't forget about, so you have Strix. So hold on. So these are the this is the Magic the Gathering 2021 release schedule.
All right.
So we have gotten Kaldheim.
Yes.
Already. Strixhaven is spring of 2021.
That's coming up.
That'll be the spring set. That'll be April, somewhere around that. And then there will be a whatever. But the one that you may be thinking this or forgotten about this, but after Strixhaven, summer 2021, Magic the Gathering Adventures in the Forgotten Realms.
I totally, see, and that's, I feel this is
boy
Magic one where it's like, I'm not gonna worry too much about the Strix.
That's probably why you were putting Strixhaven on the back burner, because you're like, I'm spending all my money in the summer on that fucking Forgotten.
I forgot.
So they finally took
third. I was like,
finally took like the 2 things that we love the most. Like if you take all the fantasy role playing, all that bullshit, if you take the 2 things that we absolutely love the most, and they're fucking so closely tied together, and they finally making a Magic the Gathering Dungeons and Dragons set.
Finally,
this is actually a Magic the Gathering set, not like tertiary, like the whole thing with the goddamn Godzilla thing. Like Godzilla, they kind of released that with Ikoria, but Godzilla did not exist in the Ikoria universe.
There
was just special editions of Ikoria cards. Right. There was just the special editions of Ikoria cards that had Godzilla cards. This is literally a Magic the Gathering set in the world of Dungeons and Dragons.
That's awesome.
So there's gonna be like, is there gonna be a fucking legendary Drizzt?
Yeah.
Because you fucking know I'm making that EDH deck.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat. But yeah, and then there, it just says Innistrad. I still am not really 100% sure on that one, but it's, I think they're doing like Innistrad werewolves and Innistrad vampires. It's kind of like a dual set in the fall. Time Spiral Remastered's coming out. That I'm excited about that one. Time Spiral was like a really fucking cool old set.
Yeah.
That was the one that kind of introduced the whole meaning behind Time Spiral was kind of like how each color's got its own identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like white usually can't do things that blue. It's like white doesn't have like a whole lot of like control magic or like counter spells and stuff like that. You know, blue doesn't have like destruction, destroy, in that kind of thing. And Time Spiral kind of flipped that. And so they introduced cards that kind of broke the color pie. And so I'm kind of excited that one. And Modern Horizons 2, which is just a cash grab. That's it in the end of the year. It's a way to introduce modern. So that's a format, modern. It's a way to introduce staples to the format, and they're fucking overpriced packs. Usually come with one foil. I'm not usually really. I was back in the beginning when those first started coming out, but now I'm just like, I'm not that excited.
It's real quick, not to interrupt you. It's funny that you're talking about them not driving the IPs into the ground, and I don't feel like they are. If you're already at the end of 2021, and we only have one set that has an IP attached to it,
right? Yeah.
So Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, because Lord of the Rings and
sorry, I gave it away.
So Lord of the Rings and so hey, we just talked about Dungeons and Dragons, the next biggest fantasy thing on my radar.
Yeah.
One of the biggest fantasy worlds that I love. I mean, like I think me and you have talked about this before, or you may know this about me, but and it's so funny because I feel like this is where you and I differ. Because it was obvious in the role-playing memories, RPG memories.
Yeah. Okay, what was that?
Because you were talking about like Shadowrun and stuff like that, and I'm like, that's where you and I differ, because I do like sci-fi. Like, don't get me wrong, like I do like sci-fi, but the reason why like I hated Judge Dredd when I was a kid and you loved it is because like I am not like a big sci-fi spacey kind of person. My fantasy is like high fantasy. It's like lords and ladies, like dragons, swords, that kind of thing. So for me, like what gets me going isn't fucking Star Trek and Star Wars, it's Lord of the Rings. Like that's, and then what like, that is what,
I love Lord of the Rings,
right?
But like, if you look at my music, we'll do it because we're music heads. If you look at my music collection, it's majority metal, and then hip hop, rap, and then like rock, weird shit. You know what I mean? It kind of like starts branching off. But if you were to put it all together and then weigh it, in metal would clearly outweigh everything else. And that's how I am with the fantasy, my type of sci-fi or fantasy, and I like Star Wars, because Star Wars is actually more Lord of the Rings than like you would probably relate to it more than you would some of the hardcore sci-fi stuff that I like watching Tales from the Loop, you know what I mean, and just being, you'd have to like, I'd have to find like friends and be like, do you like depressing sci-fi that makes you question everything around you, like that's you know what I mean, or like cyborgy type shit. So when I started doing D&D, it was like I had to get out of my comfort zone and just break it down and kind of do the Star Wars thing, where it was just like, who cares where it's set in? You can still tell interesting stories, just in this framework. And we'll get into this later in a later episode. I feel like Dungeons and Dragons is less like Tolkien fantasy where it started. You know what I mean? And it's more a world that can never advance because magic and monsters still exist. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, totally.
So it's very just like, because there's a image from a book that I'm excited about, and the guy has like modern clothes on almost. He's got a shirt tucked in, and it's like, and it's, you got this weird contraption around him, and you kind of get like reading the new books and seeing the monsters and seeing everything is like, oh, this is just a world that can never advance because it's always in turmoil because magic exists. Like, why do you need, medical equipment when you can heal through magic?
Right.
But we've been around for, however long this world has been existing. So they have like other sort of real worldy, that makes sense. Like,
oh yeah.
Airships.
Well, no, and there's also like there's also the concept too.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also the concept too that like, okay, when Gary Gygax started this shit back in like the 60s, like that was probably his main inspiration. Was he probably read Tolkien, and he had this like thing with dragons and elves.
Yeah, because wasn't it based on like tabletop wargaming?
Tabletop wargaming. Yeah. But it's once you get older, and now I'm different now. Like I love all that shit now.
Oh,
like, I'm just thinking like back.
I'm
thinking like back like in the beginning, like when the first time I walked into like Walden Books and I saw Spelljammer, and it was like a guy on the cover with like a gun, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, you ain't no guns in Dungeons and Dragons. Like,
I was like,
I couldn't like go beyond like, hey, look, just because it's called Dungeons and Dragons, you got to realize like that's a rule set. That is a like a shell of something that can be it can be expanded on. And so this is going to be like, I'm real off the wall here, but I kind of look at it in the concept of the different worlds and stuff like that. I look at it as the same concept as Final Fantasy.
Yeah, there's it's more like towards 15, Final Fantasy now.
There's like 15 Final Fantasies, 16 Final Fantasies now, and everybody's always like, how can that be Final Fantasy if there's been like 16? And it's like, no, it's not
always about a world dying.
Right. It's because it's the different creators' world and concept that they wanted to build at that time. But the whole concept behind Final Fantasy is that whatever world that exists in or whatever thing is going on, it's always like at the precipice of doomsday for that storyline.
Yeah.
So they're not usually connected. I don't think any of the Final Fantasies really blend together. I mean, yeah, you can make the argument that like there's some tertiary
sequels and there's like,
but for the most part, it's like the whole concept behind Final Fantasy is that within that world. So if you're playing Final Fantasy 12, those characters, that world that's going on right there, like they're at the breaking point of that world. And so they've got to do what they can to save themselves from, whatever's going on. And so where I was trying to like make that make sense with the whole Dungeons and Dragons thing is that like, yeah, you can come up with things like Spelljammer and even branch off into other role-playing games. It's like, yeah, not every role-playing game has to be like, we're riding horses and slaying dragons and drinking out of fucking water skins and we only have swords and staves and magic at our disposal. Like you can make a fantasy role-playing game based on a Western. Or like in your case with Vampire and stuff like that. Vampire was more kind of like almost like a 90s, the actual freaking in my mind, I imagine that being like kind of like the not the Resident Evil movies. What was the ones with
Blade?
Underworld. Kind of like Blade, but what was the other ones?
Underworld.
Or the the Underworld movies, like with the Lycans and the werewolves. And
there was probably because those were coming out when we were kind of role playing. But but Blade was a huge thing, Matrix, stuff like that. But
I remember way back then, like because I do remember this because what jarred my memory was the role playing game. Or the role-playing memories when you were going through the books and you were talking about Vampire and stuff like that, is that I remember either I was just getting ready to move down to Indiana or I had just moved down to Indiana and we were doing this whole like, like we need to figure out a way to role play and stuff like that. And you were talking about I could role play as an EMT that like steals blood and stuff like that. Right. And it's like, so in my mind, I was like, oh shit, this is like a fucking modern day role playing game where it's all like gritty, like city and stuff like that. And like, I'm like this fucking like I'm this EMT working in this ambulance, but I'm around blood all the time and I'm going to steal blood for the vampire. Like I was all about that. And then I either moved or whatever, and that never came to fruition. But
well, and it's funny because I think we're like the perfect exact opposites. Like you're more in the high fantasy than sci-fi. I'm more in the sci-fi than high fantasy. But because we get into things so heavy, now that I've gotten into D&D, I like dig it. I love it, and I like that I can compartmentalize things creatively and be like, no, this storyline needs to fit into Dungeons and Dragons. And oh, believe me, I've been up late nights looking through like 5e variants and like future, and there's people that do, they make 5e compatible different worlds. I haven't found, because I like D&D. And if I'm going to do a different system that's not Dungeons and Dragons or like Kids on Bikes, because I know those the best, it needs to fit really good for me, and it needs to fit good for the group. Like I wouldn't do a Doctor Who RPG. You guys don't have any relationship to it, which doesn't really matter, but I wouldn't do something so out of the realm. I'm looking for something more very specific. I'm looking for like, what's his name in Back to the Future? Marvin Berry. You know that sound you're looking for? Like that's me. Yeah. I'm looking for that RPG sound. Anything else you want to touch on? I know
no, we kind of spun up there, but it was because I was excited about I was excited about the actual prospect of there being Lord of the Rings in
I'm excited.
Magic the Gathering. It just I haven't looked heavily into the acquisition of that or whatever, so I have no idea. I mean, theoretically, Magic works on a 2-year cycle, and what that means is that usually like the shit that comes, I don't mean shit, but like Strixhaven, right? So when Strixhaven, like let's say, I don't even know what the date is, but we're gonna call it April 1st. So April 1st, Strixhaven comes out. It is known among most Magic players that they have been working on Strixhaven for 2 years prior.
Yeah,
because they have to do everything from the creation of the cards, the testing of the cards. They have what's called the Future League, which is just players that play the new cards to figure out how they're going to interact with the ones that already exist, and things like that. So if this is something that just happened this year, which is what I got to do the research and find out, like, are they just now announcing this, or did this just happen? So for the sake of argument, if February they just acquire Lord of the Rings, don't plan on there being Lord of the Rings cards until 1 to 2 years.
And that's where I was mistaken. I saw the acquisition of the IP for Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
I forgot about Dungeons and Dragons, but we had mentioned that before on the cast.
I mean, they could do something crazy like take existing cards they were going to put out and like slap a skin on it, but that's weak. They want it.
And what was the last one?
Warhammer.
Oh,
Warhammer 40K. So I'm excited about that.
That'll be an interesting one because in Magic,
Warhammer is something that like this is the funny thing about Warhammer. This is my thing with Warhammer, is that Warhammer has been something that has interested me for probably as long as it's been out. So for you Warhammer people out there, you know how long Warhammer's been out. And I know absolutely nothing about, because every time I go to get into it, I'm like, fuck that. I can't. I've already got enough shit. I mean, look behind me. This is
because it's
what you see on camera. That only constitutes 10% of my physical media collection. I've already got enough shit, enough board games, enough card games, enough Magic the Gathering shit. I can't be buying plastic models of shit that I'm not going to fucking.
Well, and we were talking about it. My coworker does Infinity. I think it's Infinity. So he paints them. He does really well, and you could hire people to do it. But we were talking about it. I go, it's 2 hobbies in one. It's the playing hobby. It's like D&D is the same way. You can be a player and just play and have fun. But if you're a DM, it's world building. So it's like two hobbies in one. It's reading the book,
Right.
doing the where Warhammer and those miniature games, they look so cool, but I don't have
And there is some
bandwidth
coolness to
two
that.
hobbies of playing it and then and I
It
love
is kind of cool though because
what's that?
I was just saying it is cool though because it's a hobby that's got that built-in safety
You could
factor
always play
of
it. Always play.
well, if you can't play,
Yeah.
you're always like painting, working in an army because you don't want to be like me. I got into War Machine like 4 or 5 years ago with my buddy Doug, and we went in together on like the starter player pack or whatever, and so he took one faction, I took the other faction, and then like we split it somehow. Like he took like some of the supplements, I took the rule books, and he was like, I can find them on PDF, whatever. I still have a gray army because I've never freaking painted those.
Dude, I am an artist for a living, and I do not want to paint.
So there is that aspect of it that's like cool. It's like, oh well, I am in the middle of a pandemic, and I've always wanted to paint these, so now I can paint them or whatever. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it because like the world, you know what I mean? Like the story behind it, like what little teeny bit I know about it, like it looks like it's
awesome.
It could be fucking cool.
Anytime the new video game comes out, it's in a wish list somewhere. I'm always kind of itching to get into it because I know what's going to happen. It's going to suck me in, and I'm going to have the freaking 40-year-old virgin,
the big freaking magnifying glass,
and that's the reason why. And no offense to anybody who paints this, because my buddy paints them at work. I love them. I love seeing a friend of mine who's in the comics. She's been painting the D&D minis, and I might be like, hey, I'll buy some. I'll commission you, to do it. So it's no disrespect, but of all the stuff in that movie that I have done in my life, like I collect video games like crazy. I used to have Spawn action figures. Like, you know how hard it is for
you can't take this out of the plastic.
Out of the plastic. It's just that idea of me like, like painting the guy. You like blue pants or whatever, and I'm just like, I can't do it. And it's just this time. I can't. Mainly, it's just the time of I don't have another hobby, especially another art hobby where my art stuff doesn't cross over. Maybe when I'm older and retired.
Well, yeah, no, that's
the other thing to think about. I'm not going to pick up golf, so
the other thing to think about with the miniatures too is that like all of these things that we're into, it's like we have our own disposable income that we like to spend on this. So like over the years, I've spent an embarrassing amount of money on Magic the Gathering. Things like that. But that being said, the things that we've mentioned, Magic the Gathering, role-playing games and stuff like that, it's very, very, very minimal buy-in. I mean, you can literally go and spend $20. Now, it may not be the best one you can get, but you can literally go and spend $20 on a Magic pre-constructed deck, and you have a deck. You can go and play, you can go and learn, you can be with your buddies, whatever. And then the actual booster packs and stuff like that only cost a couple bucks to blend and stuff like that. With the role-playing games, you need to go out and you need to spend a little bit of money on one book. You buy Janice that one book. Janice and Josh, they didn't even have the fucking book. Right. Yeah. Because we had the information for them. Yep. Something like a miniature game, that's a lot of buy-in for something that you may or may not like. If you're just like excited because you're at like Gen Con, you're like, oh my God, this shit looks cool, I'm going to get it. Like if you're just excited and you just jump into it, you're not realizing like, dude,
you're drowning.
It costs a lot of money plastic, to get like a beginning army. And then if you want to expound upon that, you got to buy the paint and the supplies and have the time to paint that shit and stuff like that. So there is that aspect of it, but most people that are probably into something like that aren't into 10 other hobbies on top of it. So
I know,
and that's the problem with us. Like the problem with us is that like none of this shit is really that big of a deal. Collecting physical media is not that big of a deal. Playing role-playing games, not a big deal. Playing Magic or other board games and stuff like that, like expensive games that we buy at Gen Con, not a big deal. You're someone like me and you collect physical media, play board games, play Magic the Gathering, play video games, play computer games. That's where it becomes a problem.
A lot of people, it's their
that's
one
eight
game.
fucking hobbies.
Yeah, reading,
all building on top of each other.
Yeah.
Lucky for me though, I always have a certain and don't I don't mean this like I'm not saying like money's no object. I'm just saying like lucky for me at the end of each pay period after I pay my bills and stuff like that, I always have like a certain amount. It may not be that much, but I always have a certain amount of disposable income. And usually my disposable income only goes to whatever it is that I'm really into at that point in time. Yeah. And that's the whole point of this podcast called, being called Scattercast, because it's like, I may talk a lot of bullshit and game about Magic the Gathering, but I haven't spent money on Magic the Gathering product in like a month and a half. So
So anything else you want to talk about?
Nope, not on Magic.
All right, cool. So thanks for watching. It's a good episode. Talked a little bit about the new sets are coming out.
I'm so excited.
Went on some tangents. I'm excited for the D&D one and and real quick, to prove that I like Lord of the Rings, I actually like the Hobbit movies a lot because it's just more time spent in that world.
Yes.
So I know those get kind of some hate, but
the very first Hobbit, by the way, I'll tell you a quick story, then we can sign off. Okay. So the very, very first Hobbit movie was the only movie that I can think of that I actually fell asleep during, and it had nothing to do with that movie itself. It was years ago when it came out, and I was still doing triathlons at the time, and I went and did a triathlon, and then after the triathlon was over, Amber and I, we were just like, it was just me and her. We didn't have Alex yet, so we drove. She wanted to like surprise me for, it may have been close to my birthday or something, I don't know, but she wanted to surprise me for some reason. No, it couldn't have been my birthday because it was triathlon. I wouldn't have been swimming in March. Whatever. That's neither here nor there. She wanted to surprise me. She's like, "Hey, we're going to Kalahari." And I was like, "Oh, no way." She's like, "Yeah, I got us a room at Kalahari for the night. Like, it'll be fun and stuff like that." And so we drove like so I did this triathlon. Then we drove like 4.5 hours away to Kalahari. And we get there and we check in, and she's like, "Hey, I have a really good idea. I want to surprise you. We're going to go. I found a movie theater that's 20 minutes from here, and it's playing The Hobbit." And I'm like, "No way. That's awesome." She's like, "Yep." And she's like, "Are you hungry?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, let's go get dinner first." So we like drive 20 minutes away, eat this like big ass fucking dinner or whatever, and then go to the Hobbit movie. Dude, it got to like that, like 20 minutes in where they're like, like singing that fucking dwarf song, and I fucking passed out because I was like so spent from like running that race, driving 4.5 hours, eating that fucking dinner. So I was excited when that shit came out on Blu-ray because I'm like, "Oh great,
I can see it now."
I get to see the movie that I slept like fucking like almost the entire way through. But I felt so shitty because we spent that money going to see it, and it's such a like I was so excited for that movie, and my excitement could not keep me up for that fucking movie.
And what, real quick, wasn't there also a story of it ending and Amber not realizing it was part of a trilogy?
Yes.
There's more.
Yes.
More.
Yeah. And when it ended, like I woke up like 20 minutes to go, and then it was just like to be continued. And she was like, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh, babe, it's gonna be 3 movies. You know that."
Yeah.
I like bebop out of there like nothing happened.
You're all rested.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this. Let us know if you are excited for some of the new series, or even ones that we didn't talk about. We kind of brushed over some of the later stuff. If you're like, whatever with the, some fans might be interested in that. Interested in the Innistrad, any of the original Time Spiral are coming out. Hit us up in the comments. Thanks for watching. You made it to the end. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.